Approach the bench immediately. Judge Eleanor Blackwood's voice cuts through the courtroom like thunder on a clear day. Officer Raymond Prescott stands frozen at the witness stand, his face drained of color. The young black defendant, Marcus Washington, looks up for the first time today, confusion replacing despair in his eyes. Picture this moment. A courtroom frozen in shock as the heavy oak doors swing open. The rhythmic click of heels against marble floors announces her arrival before anyone sees her face. Victoria Prescott, silver streaking through her dark hair, clutches a small USB drive like it's made of diamonds and nitroglycerin. Officer Prescott's testimony dies in his throat as his ex-wife locks eyes with him across the room. But let me take you back, because what happens next will change everything. Judge Eleanor Blackwood arrives at the courthouse 3 hours before this moment. At 53, she moves with the deliberate grace of someone who spent 15 years proving she belongs behind that bench. The security guard at the entrance glances at her ID badge, then does a double take. "You don't look like a judge," his eyes say before his mouth forms a stiff apology. Eleanor's learned to wear her judicial robes like armor. She's learned which battles to fight and which to let slide across her skin like rainwater. Today, she straightens her spine and keeps walking. Another day, another microaggression filed away in the mental cabinet already overflowing with them. In her chambers, Eleanor reviews Marcus Washington's case file, her stomach knotting tighter with each page. The young man was arrested for allegedly threatening Officer Prescott during a routine traffic stop. The bodycam footage that might have told the truth had mysteriously malfunctioned. Eleanor's law clerk brings her morning coffee, placing it beside a framed photo of Eleanor's father, the first black detective in their precinct back in the 70s. What would he think of her now? His voice echoes in her memory. Sometimes justice needs a helping hand. Her pen hovers over her notepad. Eleanor has spent 15 years building her reputation, 15 years of careful neutrality, of playing by rules designed long before people who looked like her were allowed to enforce them. One controversial decision could unravel it all. Down the hall, Marcus Washington sits with his overworked public defender. At 22, he'd been saving for community college, his entire future balanced on the edge of a knife. One traffic stop, one angry cop with a history of targeting young black men, one missing body cam video, and now one judge who suspects the truth but needs proof. The bailiff appears at her door. Court is about to begin. Eleanor places her reading glasses on her nose and stands, adjusting her robes. She feels the weight of two paths diverging before her, the safety of procedure or the risk of justice. She doesn't know it yet, but in 30 minutes, Victoria Prescott will walk through those courtroom doors, and nothing will ever be the same. Courtroom 7 feels like a pressure cooker as Eleanor flips through Marcus Washington's case file one final time before the proceedings begin. The inconsistencies jump out at her like neon signs. The arrest report claims Marcus was belligerent, yet the booking photo shows a soft-spoken young man with no prior record. Officer Prescott's statement describes Marcus reaching for his waistband, yet the inventory lists no weapon. Eleanor's pen taps rhythmically against her desk. Something doesn't add up, but suspicion isn't evidence. Without that bodycam footage, it's the officer's word against the defendant's, and she knows which one the jury will believe. Her mind drifts back 7 years to the first time Officer Raymond Prescott appeared in her courtroom. She remembers the case clearly. Another young black man, another traffic stop gone wrong, another miraculous malfunction of recording equipment. The defendant that day had been a 19-year-old pre-med student named Jamal. Eleanor can still see his mother in the gallery, clutching a program from his high school graduation like a prayer book. She'd watched Prescott on the stand, the same confident posture, the same rehearsed testimony. The jury had taken less than 2 hours to convict. Last she heard, Jamal was still serving time. A knock at her chamber door pulls Eleanor back to the present. Her clerk, David, enters with a stack of files, his eyes lingering on Marcus's open case on her desk. Something feels off about this one, doesn't it? Eleanor says quietly, removing her reading glasses. David closes the door, his voice dropping to a near whisper. This is the third case this year with Prescott and missing evidence. He hesitates, weighing his words. The chief judge is watching you, after that comment you made at the judicial conference about racial disparities in sentencing. Eleanor feels the weight of his words. The chief judge has been looking for reasons to discredit her, to paint her as an activist rather than an impartial arbiter of the law. One controversial ruling could give him exactly what he wants. I know my job, David, she says, replacing her glasses, but sometimes I wonder if doing my job means being part of the problem. The bailiff announces the beginning of court. Eleanor takes her position at the bench, her face a carefully constructed mask of neutrality as Officer Prescott takes the stand. She watches him place his hand on the Bible, swearing to tell the truth with the practiced ease of someone to whom lying has become second nature. I approached the suspect's vehicle after observing him fail to signal a turn. Prescott testifies, his uniform pressed and pristine. When I requested license and registration, he became immediately hostile. Based on my training and experience, his behavior suggested he might be hiding something illegal. Eleanor observes the jury nodding along, already accepting his version of events. The mostly white faces show concern as Prescott describes feeling threatened, sympathy as he explains his duty to protect the community. But then, a slip. Prescott mentions checking the taillight that was out, but in his report, he'd claimed the stop was for failure to signal. Eleanor makes a note, her pulse quickening. It's a small contradiction, but it's something. She waits for Marcus's defender to pounce on the inconsistency, but the overworked public attorney is shuffling through papers, missing the moment entirely. Eleanor watches the opportunity slip away, her frustration building as Prescott smoothly continues his testimony. Marcus slumps further in his seat. The prosecutor looks smug, and Eleanor feels the familiar, bitter taste of a system working exactly as designed not to find truth, but to process another black body into the prison industrial complex. If you were sitting where I am now, would you risk your career to stand up against injustice, or would you play it safe? Sometimes there are no easy answers, only impossible choices disguised as procedure. The bailiff passes Eleanor a note. A woman is insisting she has evidence relevant to the case. Normally, Eleanor would deny such an irregular request, but today, her pen hovers over the paper as she makes a decision that will change everything. Your Honor, the defense's motion to suppress Officer Prescott's testimony lacks any substantive basis. The prosecutor declares, his voice dripping with the confidence of someone who's never lost a case like this. Without evidence of procedural misconduct, the officer's account must stand. Eleanor feels the weight of Marcus Washington's future pressing down on her shoulders. The young man stares at his hands, already resigned to his fate. The defense attorney shuffles papers out of options and out of hope. The courtroom clock ticks mercilessly, each second bringing Marcus closer to becoming another statistic. I'm prepared to rule on this motion, Eleanor says, her voice steady despite the storm brewing inside her. She opens her mouth to deliver the words that will effectively end Marcus's chance at justice. When the heavy oak doors at the back of the courtroom creak open, the sound of heels against marble echoes through the suddenly silent room. Every head turns to witness the entrance of a woman in her 50s, elegantly dressed in a navy blue suit, silver streaks in her dark hair catching the fluorescent light. Her spine is steel, her eyes fixed on the witness stand where Officer Prescott sits. The color drains from Prescott's face like water through a sieve. His mouth opens, closes, opens again, a fish suddenly finding itself on dry land. Your Honor. The prosecutor begins, rising to his feet. This interruption is highly irregular. Eleanor raises her hand, silencing him with a gesture. Something in the woman's determined stride, in Prescott's panicked expression, tells her this is no ordinary interruption. Approach the bench, Eleanor commands, her gaze locked on the newcomer. The mysterious woman walks forward with measured steps, removing a small USB drive from her purse. My name is Victoria Prescott, she announces, her voice carrying to the back of the courtroom. Raymond's ex-wife. Officer Prescott half rises from his seat. Vicky, don't. The words escape before he can stop them, betrayal etched across his face. And I believe, Victoria continues, her voice unwavering despite the tremor in her hands. "The court would be interested in what's on this drive." The prosecutor immediately objects, his face reddening. "Your Honor, this is completely outside proper procedure. Whatever is on that drive cannot be admitted into evidence at this stage." Eleanor studies Victoria Prescott's face, seeing determination mingled with fear. "What exactly is on this drive, Mrs. Prescott?" Victoria straightens her shoulders. "Text messages. Private conversations where my ex-husband discussed targeting black residents in certain neighborhoods." Her eyes lock with Marcus. "And more importantly, the original body cam footage from Mr. Washington's arrest." The courtroom erupts. The prosecutor demands a recess. The defense attorney awakens from his stupor, suddenly energized. Marcus lifts his head, his eyes widening as a dangerous thing blooms in his chest. "Hope. Order." Eleanor's gavel crashes down. "I will have order in this court." The procedural rulebook screams in Eleanor's mind. Evidence must be properly submitted, authenticated, shared with all parties. But 15 years of watching justice slip through the cracks of procedure has taught her something else. Sometimes justice needs a helping hand. This court will take a 30-minute recess to review this potential evidence, Eleanor announces, ignoring the prosecutor's continued protests. "Bailiff, please secure the drive and prepare it for viewing in my chambers." Officer Prescott's face contorts with rage. "You can't do this," he shouts, all pretense of professionalism evaporating. "This is my personal property. She stole it. She has no right." "Officer Prescott, you will control yourself in my courtroom," Eleanor warns, but Prescott is beyond warnings now. "You're just like all the rest of them." He spits, his true colors bleeding through, looking for any excuse to take down a good officer. The slur he mutters under his breath is audible to everyone in the front row. Gasps ripple through the courtroom as the bailiffs move toward him. Eleanor's face hardens to granite. "Remove Officer Prescott from my courtroom," she orders, her voice ice, "and place him in custody for contempt of court." As the bailiffs escort a now shouting Prescott from the room, Victoria approaches the bench. "There's more," she whispers, her voice trembling. "Names of other officers, judges who knew, politicians who looked the other way." Her eyes meet Eleanor's. "A whole network, Your Honor. Raymond is just one piece of the puzzle." Eleanor feels the foundation of her carefully constructed world begin to crack. The system she served faithfully for 15 years suddenly feels like quicksand beneath her feet. Victoria leans closer. "I stayed silent for years, told myself it wasn't my business, that exposing him would hurt our children, hurt me." Her voice breaks. "But then I saw that young man's face on the news, and I couldn't sleep anymore. If someone you loved was involved in something terrible, would you expose them or protect them? How many of us have stayed silent to keep the peace, to protect our comfort, our safety, our relationships? At what point does silence become complicity?" As Eleanor rises to review the evidence that could bring down not just one corrupt officer but an entire network of injustice, she knows there's no turning back. The script has changed, but who's truly writing it now? The courtroom is packed to capacity 3 days later as Eleanor takes her seat at the bench. News cameras line the back wall, a rare exception she's granted for this moment. Marcus Washington sits at the defense table, back straight for the first time since his arrest, his mother clutching his hand. Victoria Prescott sits in the front row of the gallery, dark circles under her eyes but determination still burning in them. Eleanor takes a deep breath, looking out at the expectant faces before her. The evidence submitted to this court by Mrs. Victoria Prescott has been thoroughly authenticated by independent experts, Eleanor announces, her voice steady and clear. The body cam footage clearly contradicts Officer Prescott's sworn testimony, showing that Mr. Washington was compliant, respectful, and at no point presented any threat. The gallery erupts in whispers. Eleanor continues, her voice rising above the noise. Furthermore, the text messages and other communications provided show a disturbing pattern of Officer Prescott and several colleagues specifically targeting black residents for heightened scrutiny and manufactured charges. She looks directly at Marcus. "Mr. Washington, please rise." Marcus stands, his legs trembling slightly, hope and disbelief warring on his face. This court hereby dismisses all charges against you with prejudice. You are free to go, with this court's sincerest apologies for the injustice you have endured. Marcus collapses back into his chair, his mother's sobs of relief filling the courtroom. But Eleanor isn't finished. Bailiff, please take former Officer Prescott into custody on charges of perjury, evidence tampering, and civil rights violations. Her gaze sweeps the courtroom, landing on the district attorney. I am also referring this matter for further investigation into the other 13 officers named in Mrs. Prescott's evidence. The news breaks like a tsunami. By nightfall, Eleanor's ruling is the lead story on every network. The mayor calls a press conference, promising a full investigation. 3 other judges named in Victoria's evidence announce their early retirement within 24 hours. The police chief resigns by the end of the week. Outside the courthouse, protesters gather not in anger this time, but in hope. Signs bearing Marcus's face and the words, "Justice at last," wave alongside calls for systemic reform. The threats begin that same night. First anonymous calls to Eleanor's chambers, then a brick through her home window, then her car vandalized with slurs. The thin blue line, it seems, doesn't appreciate being exposed. Yet when the governor calls, asking Eleanor to chair a new commission on police accountability and judicial reform, her answer comes without hesitation. Yes. 1 year later, the steps of the same courthouse host a different kind of gathering. Eleanor stands at a podium, unveiling a new judicial oversight board and mandatory bias training program for all court officers. Beside her stands Marcus Washington, now working as an advocate for the wrongfully accused through a nonprofit he founded with the settlement money from his civil suit. In the crowd, Victoria Prescott stands with 5 other women and men, all family members of officers who chose truth over loyalty. Their support group has become a powerful voice in the ongoing reforms. The journey hasn't been easy. Eleanor received armed protection for 3 months after 2 officers were arrested for plotting against her. Marcus still wakes from nightmares of jail cells. Victoria's children didn't speak to her for months after her testimony. Yet here they stand. Sometimes justice arrives through unexpected doors, Eleanor says into the microphones. It takes courage to stand up when standing up means standing alone. It takes courage to speak truth when the truth will cost you everything. She nods toward Victoria and Marcus. But one person's courage can inspire another's. One moment of truth can birth 1,000 more. One stand against injustice can start an avalanche of change. The cameras flash as Eleanor, Marcus, and Victoria raise their joined hands. 3 strangers connected by a moment of choice. A judge who chose justice over procedure. A woman who chose truth over loyalty. A young man who chose resilience over bitterness. And perhaps that's the most important lesson in all of this. Systems don't change themselves. Rules don't enforce themselves. Justice doesn't arrive by itself. It takes people, ordinary people making extraordinary choices, to bend the arc of history toward justice. The question isn't whether the system is broken. The question is, will you be one of the people brave enough to help fix it?